Well, thanks for coming back after lunch. A lot of times where I speak places, nobody comes back after lunch, so I'm happy to have you here. And after that great introduction, thank you. I'm really excited to hear what I have to say today. So, and I want to start off by where's Julian? Thank you for bringing me over across the pond and to have an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you here today. And what I want to talk about is the lessons I learned through 30 years in the FBI and a long career as a crisis negotiator, hostage negotiator, and how those lessons apply to life. And by the way, before I get into that, for those of you who are slightly interested, none of this stuff works at home. All right? Because when my wife and I have a little disagreement, she'll say, I'll say, oh, I know you're upset. I hear what you're saying, honey. She goes, no, not here. So you're never a king in your own castle. Like I said, everything in life is about negotiations. I don't know your business. I don't pretend to know your business, although I've sat back there and listened to some very interesting observations and comments from the speakers before me. But I think every facet of life involves negotiations, getting cooperation. There's two types of human interaction that constitute basically all of human interaction. It's cooperation or confrontation. You think about it, everything we do in life is one or the other. So obviously we want to stay focused in the cooperation area. If we have a problem with an employee, a subordinate, a superior, a vendor, a client, we want to try to minimize the difficulties if we can't avoid them, or resolve them very quickly if we can. One of the things I learned when I retired from the FBI in 2003, and I went in the private sector as a consultant, that relationships were everything. The old saying about you want to be a farmer instead of a hunter. You don't want to always go out and look for new business. You want to sustain the business you have and grow that business and create a relationship of trust so that even if your product or service may be more expensive than someone else's, the client says, I will never leave this company because Gary's my client relationship manager. And if I have a problem, he's going to fix it. That means a lot. That carries a lot of weight. Let me use my little clip. There's Julian. Thank you again, sir. All right, does this work? So that's me. That's my book. I hear they make great, great Christmas gifts. I was fortunate enough back in probably 2008, Random House approached me and asked me to write a book about my career. I was involved in a lot of prison riots, hijackings, right-wing militia standoffs. I flew down to Peru when the terrorists took over the Japanese ambassador's residence. Did a lot of work in the Middle East. I worked the Achille Lauro hijacking. So I had an opportunity to do a lot of unique things in the FBI. When I joined the FBI in 1972, before almost everybody was born in here, except for one or two perhaps, there was no negotiations. Law enforcement would approach a tough situation. There's a guy inside a house, he's got a gun, he's angry at his girlfriend because she's going to leave him, and he's threatening to kill her, and he's fired off shots, and the police show up, and I'll pretend this is New York. So the cops say, hey, come on out of there, because that's how they talk. And the bad guy says, no. The cops say, hey, maybe you didn't hear what I said. I said, come out of there, or we're going to come in and get you. And the bad guy says, come on in, copper, and we'd go in and get him. Sometimes it worked out pretty good. Nobody was hurt, he got arrested. Sometimes we'd kill the bad guy, because you'll be surprised to hear this, but we have a few guns in America. Sometimes our cops would get hurt, or even worse, sometimes we would hurt a hostage. So somebody came up with this idea. It was started by New York City Police Department. Said, let's try this different approach. Let's actually talk to people and listen to them, see what's bothering them, which is a kind of a warm and fuzzy concept for cops. You know, we're not into that normally. But they came to the FBI Academy and they said, we're thinking of this new idea, what do you think of it? And the FBI looked at the program and said, it is exactly what we do. Well, we had no idea. We had no program, but it was a good idea. We stole it. We taught it all over the world. And it has saved countless lives. You know, the reason I call that stalling for time, you know, here in the College of Physicians, the medical profession has always said, first do no harm. In negotiations, if you do nothing else, stall for time. Slow it down. Not because you just want to make it longer, but it allows people to make better decisions when they're making those decisions in a calmer atmosphere than when they're emotionally charged. In fact, I used to go to I went to a situation once and the on-scene commander said, you know, this thing's been going on a long time. It's almost like you're doing nothing. And I said, well, I'm engaged in dynamic inactivity. The guy goes, okay, well, all right, for a minute there, I thought you weren't doing anything. It's a true story. So what do you want to do in the workplace? Your businesses, the relationships you have with clients, marketing, advertising, PR, whatever. These are points, I'm not going to read them, that all of us can agree to, I believe. We want a collegial atmosphere. We want to work in a cooperative fashion. We want to avoid unnecessary conflict and conflict altogether. I'm not saying there's not some good synergy that should take place with some different ideas, but if it turns acrimonious, then we defeat the purpose. All right, so these are all the kind of things we want to do. We want to be in an organization that recognizes excellence, that rewards people, that not one person takes all the credit. We work as a team. We put all the oars in the water at the same time. Same in law enforcement when we're dealing with tough and difficult situations. If we don't collectively have our act together, how can we expect to really positively influence this person who's threatening someone's life? So we've got to find out how to work collegially and create a positive atmosphere. I remember when I was, some of you heard of the Waco situation, probably one of the most famous hostage situations ever in the United States, lasted 52 days. I was there for the first 26, during which we negotiated 35 people out. The FBI made some bad decisions after that, decided to bring in a negotiation leader who was a little tougher. Nobody else came out. So after Waco, the on-scene commander was told it would be a good time for him to look for a new career. The tactical commander was also encouraged to seek employment elsewhere, and I got a promotion. So the FBI appreciated that we were doing it right, but we didn't do it right there. So we have to slow things down. I remember one particular occasion, I had a team of negotiators, about 12 people were talking to David Koresh, who was a very challenging guy. He had a lot of issues. And I asked the table, what does everybody think? What are your ideas? How do you assess what's going on? I wanted to encourage input from the team, because as the leader, if I said, this is what I see, this is what I interpret, this is what we're going to do, then everybody's going to be quiet. Well, there was a brand new negotiator, brand new FBI negotiator in the room, never been to a situation before, but he lived and worked close to where this was, so he came to the scene. And we go around the room, and I asked all these experienced, gray-haired old negotiators these ideas. And I looked at this one guy and I said, do you have any thoughts? And he said, why don't we videotape the children who've been released already, and we can send the videotape into the Davidians to show the parents that, no, we haven't sent your kids away. They're waiting here for you to come out and resume your parental control. And I heard it, and it was brilliant. And of course I said, I was just going to say that. Yes, ditto. But it's always reminded me that if you create an atmosphere where your team, and you do want to function in a team concept where someone comes up with a good idea, that's what you want to encourage. Let me see if I can get this to work. So confrontation versus cooperation, that's one of our little pacifist law enforcement units in the United States. So this situation happened in Antioch, California. And what happened, a guy went through a nasty divorce with his wife. He took the two kids. She got the kids and was moving out and living in another place. But he got to visit the kids every Sunday. So he meets her in a church parking lot where he's now going to give the kids back to her after his weekend visit with him. And when she pulls her car up next to his, he's got a gun to the head of his little girl. And he says to her, get in the car or else I'll kill her. She gets in the car. He drives them all back to the house that they used to share together as a married couple before things went bad. And he says, you're a terrible mother, you're no good. Now get out of here, I'm keeping the kids, and if you call the cops, I'll kill the kids. She goes out, calls the cops show up, ends up, I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version, he ends up barricading himself in his bedroom with the two children. There's a negotiator there from the police department, and he's doing a fairly credible job of stalling for time and keeping the situation calm. Did I tell you that was a good name for a book? Anyway, Lieutenant shows up, and he says, you know, we're busy tonight. We got a lot of stuff going on. We don't have time for this nonsense. You tell that guy, if he doesn't come out in 5 minutes, we're going to come in and get him. And the negotiator says, boss, we don't do that. We don't put a deadline on ourselves. And the lieutenant says, maybe you didn't hear what I said. The negotiator delivers the message, 3 shots go off, the man kills his children and himself. Now, in the mind of the lieutenant, who was also a parent of young children, and I think all of us would agree with this sense, there's no way in the world I would ever harm one of my children. It just, the thought would never, I cannot imagine a circumstance in which I would harm one of my children. But what you don't understand is people who are desperate and think it's the end of the world, I'm going to take them with me and go to another place. We have to be smarter. They did not invest the time and the communication skills to try to diffuse this, to find out what was making this man tick. What was his major grievance? How could we form a relationship where we could influence him? Whoop, sorry. Did I double clutch? All right. I'll have to turn to read. Oh. So the prognosis for a positive outcome when we're resolving conflict is very unlikely when we're in a highly emotionally charged state. Our first goal is to de-escalate the confrontation, create an atmosphere that's conducive for cooperation, rapport building. Create that positive relationship. Now, what we want to do, think about it in your own life. When someone you know, you work with, friend, has said or done something to you that has really upset you, are you at that point in time in the best position to make good decisions? No, you're not. You're now reacting to this insult, this put down, whatever you want to say. You're angry, you're frustrated, you're hurt. You're not in a good position to make decisions. So our first job as negotiators is to lower the emotion. And I want to show you this teeter-totter. This is a great graph. I didn't invent it, but you don't know the difference, so I'll say I did. What this tells you is everything you really need to know about conflict and human interaction. And very simply put is when emotions are high, rational thinking and rational behavior are impossible. They're impossible. The only way we can begin to convince this person to cooperate, to put his gun down, to come out to work with us, is to first lower the emotion. So we go into problems thinking of the end game. The classic negotiator, untrained, would say, what do you want? I'll give it to you, then the situation's over. And that never works, because we first have to tackle the emotion that underlies the behavior. Does that make sense to you? I'm sure you can conjure up a number of examples in your client interactions where somebody's really been upset that this project you were working on for them just didn't turn out the way they wanted. They got chewed out by their boss, and now they're bringing it to you. And they're really angry and agitated. And your response should not be, listen, don't get upset. It's no big deal. We'll fix it later. Is that what that person wants to hear? No. He wants you to acknowledge that this really was a big problem. We really let you down. And I'm going to make this right. I'm going to make this right. So it's a process we have to go through. You know, and in human relationship, there's both ladies and men in here. And I'll tell you a little story from my own personal life. So I used to travel a lot, you know, and I'm going overseas for this, that, and the other thing. And I come home, and I'm really tired. And I grab an adult beverage, and I sit down in front of the TV, and I grab the greatest invention that mankind has ever come up with, the TV remote control. And I'm zapping through that. And I'm not watching the home jewelry station or a black and white movie. I'm looking for car chases, explosions, and shootouts. All right? And there I am, drinking my adult beverage, watching TV, and I feel her presence behind me. Much like the United States Cavalry knew the Apaches were sneaking up on them. I could sense it. And what did I do? Totally disregarded it, like I always do. So I'm going through my channels, and she says to me, now, gentlemen, you won't understand this because you're men. The women will understand it immediately. In female, she says to me, the ladies know exactly what that means. The men have no idea. What that means, guys, is, my beloved husband, I'd like to converse with you. Now, my wife's lucky. She has a very attentive husband. My response is, which the ladies don't understand, but for the men, we know that means, yes, my beloved, how may I interact with you at this point in time? So, not being satisfied with my initial, and I thought, spot-on response, she ratchets up the next level, and listen to the nuance here. Very different language, much more urgent, much more important. So I, as a good husband, finally decide I'm going to get engaged. So I slightly turn my head with only one eye on the TV, and I go, huh? And then she says, I can't believe it. My boss made me look. This is the third Friday in a row. He made me work late. And I can't stand it. I couldn't get on time. So what do I say? My wife's so lucky. I'm a brilliant guy. In law enforcement, we were taught to identify a problem, solve a problem, and move on to the next problem. So I said, listen, I've heard your problem here. You tell your boss you're not working late on Fridays anymore. Honey, would you get me another beer since you're over close to the refrigerator? That's good stuff, right, guys? I mean, it's really good stuff. What woman wouldn't be happy with that? Apparently mine. So she gets upset, and, and then we talk, and then she calls her friend, and her friend spends an hour. I'm waiting for dinner. I'm hungry. I'm a traveling man. And she's on the phone with her friend, and her friend, oh, that must have made you feel so bad. I used to have a boss like that, too. Never tries to solve the problem, just listens to her. Well, of course, this never really happened. I made it up. You don't think I'd be, well, anyway. The problem is, take the time to listen, whether it's your children. You ever heard the song by Harry Chapin, Cats in a Cradle? I choke up every time I hear it. Father never has the time to talk to his kids, and then all of a sudden when he wants to spend time with his kids when he's grown, the kids are busy. He said, my son grew up just like me. So we have to stop what we're doing, engage with people. Not only our friends and our family, the most important, but people that we maybe have an adversarial relationship with. Listening is the cheapest concession we can make. The cheapest concession. And it shows you're worthy of their respect because you were taking the time to listen. Now, I was traveling in Memphis last year, Tennessee, and I do what I always do. I sit up at a bar and I order a steak and an adult beverage, and I talk to the bartender about the basketball game. And I look for my target du jour. And my target du jour was a guy that came in medical scrubs. A very busy man, very busy man. And he sits at the bar, give me a martini. Very busy, busy. And I said, how? I said, how are you? He said, oh, I'm fine, very busy, very busy. And I said, well, are you a doctor? It looks like you just came from surgery. He said, no, I'm a medical device salesman. So I said, unbelievable. I don't think I've ever talked to a medical device salesman. What kind of devices do you sell? Well, artificial ankles and knees, hips. So why are you dressed up in surgical scrubs? He said, well, I go into the surgery and show the doctors how to use it. So you tell doctors what to do. Anybody seen a little ego boost there? Doctors across cultures are held in high esteem, but this guy teaches the doctors. Well, after 40 minutes, I knew everything about Bob. I knew where he went to college. I knew his wife's name, his children's name, how long he'd worked in this company. I knew every single thing about him. And I finally finished my drink, my steak. I said, Bob, I got to go now. I said, it's absolutely amazing to talk to you. I learned so much tonight. And he said, what was your name again? Gary Noesner. Oh, where did you work? I said, I used to be the chief hostage negotiator for the FBI. Hey, have a nice night. And I walk away and I see him going. And his look said, well, maybe I could have heard a story or two if I'd taken the time and asked some questions. And I wasn't trying to set him up for that, but it shows you the power of listening. People like to talk about what they do. They like to talk about what they're interested in, and it's a great way to make a connection, not just if they're angry. Now, one thing when we go into these interactions of all kinds, the only thing you can absolutely control is your own emotions. I try to influence others. I try to steer them in a way that I think is positive for both them and myself, but I can't control them. I can only control how I come across and how I appear. And there is a thing called likability, folks. Some people have it naturally in here. Others of us have to work on it. Some of you, not so much. Okay? The kind of person you meet at a cocktail party and say, gee, I don't know why, but I really like that person. They really seemed interesting. They have an interesting background, or we have some common experience together, whatever it might be. We should get together with them again, honey. Let's go out to dinner with them, that couple. They seem nice. It's hard to define what characterizes those attributes that are attractive to us. But it's likability, and most of us can work on it. Not in a phony, fake way like the proverbial car salesman. Hey, I know exactly what kind of car you need. No, you don't. I just walked in here. You don't know anything about me. That false friendship, that false knowledge is no good. But if you do it sincerely and genuinely, I'd really like to learn more about your business and this project you're working on. But how did you get into this business? What's your background? That's very interesting. Tell me more about that. One of the best times I ever had speaking was at Northeastern University in Boston about 2 years ago. They had 200 or 300 students in there, all guys and gals. And I said, guys, how many of you in here are interested in the ladies in here? said, you don't know how to talk to them, do you? Because I didn't when I was your age. I said, here's how it should work. You meet this young lady after the class, you're at the coffee shop or whatever, and you say to her, you know, I think I've seen you in campus. What year are you in? Yeah, and so forth and so on. You do all the basic pleasantries. And then at some point in time you say, hey, what do you like to do? Do you have any hobbies? And she says, I love to sew. And most guys go, but no, you, my students, say, you sew? Yes. Did you make that outfit? Well, yes, I did. That's amazing. I wouldn't know how to do that. Where did you learn to do that? I learned it from my grandmother, Nana. What did you hear about Nana already? What's your clue? Nana's somebody important. Sounds like you're very close to your Nana. Oh. We lost her a year ago. It must have been tough on you. On and on and on. Now, an hour later, you part company. She goes back to the dormitory with her two roommates, and she says, I found him. And you didn't spend a minute talking about your fast car and your athletic prowess and how cool you are and the band that you used to play in and how you were a star quarterback in the high school football team. None of that. You listened to her. She liked to talk about something she was interested in. You've shown an interest in it. There's more power there, folks, than you realize. All right, where am I? Go on. So, influencing others. What do we want to do? There's a lot of active listening skills. Some of you have heard it. We borrowed them from the counseling community. But I'm going to just give you a few real easy ones. The first one, maybe the most important, I think, is paraphrasing or summarizing in your own words what someone has just told you. So you learned how to sew from your Nana. You know, you put in your own words what that person has said to you. And you really had a really special relationship, and then you lost her 2 years ago, and it's just kind of been heartbreaking for you. Yes, you got it right. You got it right. Bingo, points for you, Gary. Acknowledge their feelings. You sound sad. You seem confused. And ask open-ended questions. Could you tell me more about that? Start off easy. Just say, did you have an interesting vacation last year? Yeah, where'd you go? I went to Portugal. Oh, I've never been there. Can you tell me about it? 20, 30 minutes later, you've learned a lot about Portugal. But you've learned about how this person traveled there and how they felt about it. Don't do this in a phony, contrived way. Genuinely want to know about people. I'll tell you, it's the most powerful tool in the world. Communications is everything. It's so important. When we do these things, when we acknowledge their frame of reference, how they felt about some experience, we become very likable to that person. You know, in World War II, the U.S. Army invented a little candy called the M&M. Chocolate on the inside, candy on the outside. Think of the chocolate as the story of what somebody did in life, or what they've experienced, where they went, what school they went to, what sport they like. The candy coating is how they feel about it. So think of the M&M when you're talking to somebody. When you acknowledge them, acknowledge both the story and the feelings that surround that story. You do that, and you will get a date to the prom, I guarantee you. All right, where are we? So, I know how we doing. The sincere, what? 7 minutes, but nobody's counting. Anna's watching me like a hawk. So, the sincere and genuine demonstration of your interest and understanding of a person's perspective is far more important than your ability for a quick solution. Now, years ago, I was with my family in Washington, D.C. on the Mall for the 4th of July, our Independence Day, when we broke the yoke from the British. Anyway, big day in America. Sorry, I forgot where I was for a second. When we, cast off the oppressors, and so I got too many friends in Scotland Yard. Anyway, you did what? So I'm out there with my family, and my friends in the park police used to let me park my car close to the fireworks every year. And soon my family became a very large extended neighborhood family. So I'm there, 4th of July, once again drinking, you may have picked up, it's a weakness of mine, drinking adult beverage, baked beans, potato salad, big picnic, wonderful day. my beeper goes off back when we had beepers. And I see there's a number in there from South Carolina. I used to work in South Carolina, so I knew the area code. And I go, hello? And the guy says, this is Mike Duke. He's one of my negotiators in South Carolina. He says, I'm on my way to the USS Yorktown, a decommissioned aircraft carrier. And there's a guy up there with a high-powered rifle. It's a museum. There's a guy up there with a high-powered rifle, and he's shooting at people. And it's kind of become a nuisance, you know? So I'm so brilliant, fueled by adult beverages, I say, listen, 4th of July, it's a very symbolic day. U.S. aircraft carrier decommissioned. I'm sensing we're dealing with a disgruntled veteran. Now, use active listening skills and convince this guy to put his gun down. Now, after you get there and learn out more information, call me back and I will have more brilliant advice for you. He says he will. Another beer, relaxing, so easy to solve, you know? So the phone rings again. I mean, another number comes in the beeper. I call the number and the guy says, hello. I say, yeah, this is Gary Noesner from Washington. Is Mike Duke there? That's the name of my guy. No, there's no Mike Duke here. I said, well, is this the command post? No. I said, well, is this the negotiation room? No. He said, who'd you say you were again? I said, well, I'm Gary Noesner. I'm the chief negotiator of the FBI. Dun, dun, dun. He says, I guess I'm in more trouble than I thought. Now, that's what you call a clue in my business. So I said, you wouldn't happen to be the guy with the gun, are you? Yes, I am. Unbeknownst to them, the number they gave me to call could be answered up on the bridge of this decommissioned aircraft carrier. So I'm talking to Jim from 400 miles with maybe a little bit more alcohol than I should be doing this particular task in my life. And Jim is upset because he's a disgruntled veteran. He's not been handled well. He's not happy with his benefits. He's got drug and alcohol dependency. And I spent a little time talking with Jim, more than a little bit of time, calming him down, and finally was able to get him transferred to some negotiators down there. But you know what? What did he need? He needed respect. He was a veteran. He served his country, fallen on very hard times, wasn't maybe getting the services that he felt he needed or deserved, and that's probably true. Not a dangerous bad guy, not intent on killing people. He fired that weapon on to be heard. No one's listening to me. No one's helping. You've got to become that anchor and that voice. And I talked to Jim, and we were able to get him to surrender peacefully. Time and time again, we're able to do that in the most tense situations by, instead of being that cop that shows up and says, you better do this, I'm commanding you, you better come out, we say, I don't say, I'm the chief of the FBI's negotiator. I say, this is Gary, I'm here to help you. Can you tell me what's going on in there? I know you and your wife have got some issues. I want to help if I can. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. Doesn't that sound a little softer, a little nicer, a little more nurturing? There's still people in law enforcement who have trouble making that transition, understanding that approach, but it's effective and it works. So, I've been through my slides. How about that? I know we're going to have some time for Q&A. I apologize because there's just no way in a short period of time I can tell you about Waco and Peru and all these interesting cases. Of course, that's all in the book. On Amazon.com, by the way. But there's a lot of life lessons, and I know and have learned if this stuff works when someone's life is on the line, and it does in the high 90 percentiles, the high 90s. If it works in those situations, don't you think it'll work for you at home with your family, at work with your coworkers, outside of the office when you're dealing with customers, clients, and vendors? The answer is it will. Just take the time and invest in building a relationship. It will reap a benefit and give you a dividend that you cannot even begin to understand. So, that's all for me. I said sit down and shut up, right? Yeah. I hear that a lot, by the way, but yeah. Thank you.
Well, that's a bit of a tough act to follow, isn't it? I always knew when Julian asked me to do this. And obviously I failed in the first rule of negotiation because Gary got 30 minutes, I got 20 minutes. So I'm not sure what good negotiator I am, but I have got Sir Martin Sol and all sugar in my presentation, if that's any consolation. I'm not sure about the jokes and stuff like that, but I will try my best. So I've got 25 years experience in marketing procurement, those that don't know me. I've worked client and agency side and run my own consultancy firm, so I've seen both sides of the fence. And hopefully, following on from the entertaining Gary, I'll be sort of really talking about, you know, really you know, I mean, that's really hard what Gary had to do, obviously, but I'm sure a lot of you feel that actually negotiating with client procurement's a lot worse. And I'll give credit to Mark from Blueprint for that, because he gave me, I'm like, how do I follow Gary? And he actually gave me that, so credit where credit's due in terms of that. So that's just, well, I haven't got a book, but that's me. I'm sure some of you feel that way, that if you're in the space shuttle, as I heard from space, there's only one thought on my mind. Every part was supplied by the lowest bidder. So would you be worried? Would you be worried? I think you would be, wouldn't you? And obviously that's what I hear a lot. Thank you. So that's what I hear a lot, obviously, from agencies in that procurement is just about, you know, the lowest cost. And it's hard, you know, I'm not here to, you know, give you the answers to everything. Like, you know, Gary said, if I give you one or two things, that will really, really help. And it is hard. I mean, you know, if you count the number of agencies, in the UK, it's 20,000. Someone told me the other day that in the world, there's 1 million agencies. It's an oversupply market. And it's tough. It really is tough for you guys. And then we come along with our little spreadsheets, you know, that we love our numbers. And there was a study done in the UK about 10 years ago called Magic and Logic. And everyone had heard of it. But it's true. You love the magic. Your clients love the magic. What about the logic? What about the job sheets and costs and invoices? Enter stage left procurement, the quote goes from the book. And it's true, you know, it's getting that marry, the art and the science, as we said at the very beginning. We like shopping in procurement, you know. And people ask me, are procurement people, when you're born, you come out of the womb and you think, I want to be a buyer? No. Most of us actually do end up thinking, oh, what should I do? I did business studies, and I thought, oh, what should I do? And those of you as old as me, the company called Thorny MI, 25 years ago, did a corporate procurement scheme. So I spent time working for manufacturers like Thorny MI, buying things like capacitors, which still don't know what they are, through to white goods at Rumbelows. It's like a Currys, Dixons. EMI Records, I met the proclaimers. That's only, I'm sure a lot of Brits will understand that, so apologies. And then from that, I decided that I wanted to buy services. And then I specialised in marketing when I was at Cellnet, which is now Telefonica. And I do think marketing procurement is very different from normal procurement, but buying cardboard and glass, etc. But at the end of the day, we have a job to do. And we are there. But I think this slide for me sums it up, and I think really picking up from what Gary said is, you know, agencies especially, you know, because it's a people and it's that creative idea, and there's so much emotion. At the end of the day, we're doing our job. And our job, I'm not saying it's as basic as we go to the supermarket and we chuck you all in the trolley, we go to the cash till and pay. But there is a degree of, it's probably more clinical for us, whereas for you, obviously, there's more emotion. And I'm sure a lot of you feel like this, that you've done the deal, and that's an adult beverage, to use Gary's words, I love that you're toasting with your marketing client, your brand client, your head of socials, and that's great. We've done the pitch, we've selected you. Oh, by the way, can you go around with the Axeman? I'm not sure about the handcuffs in 50 Shades of Grey or whatever there, but can you know, and I know, and I think procurement people shouldn't do that. You know, not about the handcuffs. But I think, you know, it's very much, if you've been selected, they should have been part of the process from the start. And I know so many of you in that situation where you've done the deal, you've done all the hard work, you've given your creative idea, and by the way, can you just walk around the corner? And I've got a friend who runs her own strategic consultancy, ran me last week, you know, and she's in exactly the same situation. She's about to do the workshop the next day, you know, and the procurement guy said, I know we've got loads of money, they're a top-end bank, but, you know, I want you to sort of save me some money. So I was just giving her some tips about how to deal with him as a person and the targets he had. So, and also it's frustrating, you know, that I tell the story of a buyer last year. She worked for Heinz and she bought beans. Now, if you were the buyer of beans for Heinz, you think you're pretty good, you think? After tin cans, it's probably one of their top raw materials. And she got, we would like to say, promoted into marketing. So she got given the task to do a digital pitch the next week. And she went in, and I got this from the agencies, and did a pitch applying her baked bean buying process. I'm sure a lot of you can sort of resonate with that actually we're not about, you know, I don't know, you grow beans, and, you know, she just didn't get it. And for me, the responsibility is on her, her manager, and the company to make sure that, you know, that she'd moved into that role, and it is a different skill set. I was at Procurement. We have a, people laugh, our marketing procurement conference is called Procurement. Actually, I've never asked why, but actually, but Neil Christie from Wyden and Kennedy was there, and they were negotiating with a large retailer, supermarket, and he went in, and the procurement guy actually was really honest and said, oh, you know, I've never bought marketing, but yeah, and actually said, I'm used to buying beans, and Neil Christie said, these are magic beans. Which I thought actually was really, really good. And actually even better so, I'm a huge tweeter. He did a really great tweet yesterday. It was, the conference was at Tower Bridge. And on his way there was the Queen's Barge. If anyone's seen it, but it's really ornate. And he tweeted, on my way to procurement conference, this is my mode of transport, because the tube wouldn't work, which I thought was very funny. So it's about understanding, you know, and that's what we're doing in this session, is really understand how we work. And we're not perfect. Great quote from the sort of king of negotiations. In business, as in life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And I echo Gary about using these skills at home as well. My other half is a trained psychologist, so our negotiations are interesting because we sit there in silence. And the two cats are like, what's going on? What are you going to do? So it's always interesting. So, you know, what is negotiation? It's based on a set of knowledge, and for me that's quite a common theme in my presentation, is about information, knowledge, skills, doing your preparation. And also the point is in the fact that you listen to us for 50 minutes, not that I'm sore that I've still got the 20 minutes and Gary got 30, is that you are taught, you know, that you don't come out the womb like us procurement people, but, you know, it's practice, it's learning. You know, there are negotiation courses you go on, and I think that's where agencies do fall down, is that when you've got to fight fire with fire. And you just, you know, I've got my slides about what my thought of agencies are, but we're trained negotiators. So how do you deal with them when you're across the table? So, you know, there is a framework, and anyone can learn to apply that. You just need to learn. I said Sir Martin was in here now. All I have to say is, why do I think he's the best negotiator in marketing? Not only that is his email in capital letters, which when you get an email from, you think, oh shit, what have I done? Well, I do anyway. Not that I'm in regular email contact with Sir Martin, but just his salary. I mean, you know, have you seen in the press about his salary? But you know, I've got a lot of time for him because he's direct. He knows what he wants. He knows his facts. You can have a discussion with him on any level, which I did last year, because he always moans about procurement and then blames us for all the woes in the world. And it's, you know, I said, look, come on, it's not, you know, CMOs aren't at the table. And he takes it. I really like discussing with him because he knows his stuff. He's done his prep, he knows the people, he knows the process, and he's not afraid to take it on. And that's why I do like him. So why do you need to learn to negotiate? Because obviously, as I said, you're negotiating with people like ourselves. Your client budgets, as you know, are under pressure. The scopes of work are getting tighter and smaller. Tom Lewis from the UK trade body, the IPA, yesterday used a phrase, juniorisation. I'm not sure if it is a real word, but what he said is, you know, that you guys are facing pressure from procurement, that actually you're putting more junior people on the account to make it work for you. You've got pressure, on your margins and revenue and figures. The majority are independent, but the holding companies that work for them have got all those figures to go back and pay people like Sir Martin's salary. Why I learned to negotiate, and this is a really good point that actually I got from Julian actually in the briefing call, is because your competitors will be. And if you're not in that process, you've got to play the game. You've got to know, if you're going to deal with a procurement person, there's a procurement process, think through it, plan it. So, because if you're against 2 or 3 others, you've got to think what tactics you're going to use. And as I said, it's a valuable skill set, both in work and personal. I'm actually the worst person when it comes to personal stuff. Just get it, that's fine. Do it for anybody else. Go on holiday, I'm in the market haggling for like $2 off. But for my own money, I think, oh, it's a busman's holiday, isn't it? So what do I see when I'm negotiating with you guys? Untrained, really poorly prepared, haven't really got the facts and figures to back stuff up. I ask for stuff, a week beforehand so we can review it. Oh, we'll send it tomorrow. I mean, I've seen some classics, even the last week, from media agencies that should know better. Formulas don't add up. You know, your FD thinks they're being smart by removing formulas. It doesn't help anybody. We like to see how things are structured. No currency symbols in spreadsheets. But the main thing is lack of data and substance to back stuff up. Getting back to magic and logic, if you've got facts to back up your position, it takes a lot of the heat out of the argument. So imagine, you know, you go to a procurement person and it's 100,000 euros. Well, for what? 30-second ad? For what? You know, I mean, there must be some degree of backup and how you've got to it. And there's nothing more annoying to a procurement person to see something like that. Whereas I agree that some procurement people go over the top and, you know, ask for overheads and salaries, and I have a view that that information shouldn't be shared, especially obviously salary information. And also, you're not proactive, you're not creative. And, you know, procurement person said, give me a price. Well, and if they said, what about we do this, we want to negotiate it down, fine, we negotiate it down if you give us a 3-year contract. It's about bargaining. What if we did this? What if we did that? So I just want to show this quick video because it shows the argument from both sides.
Let's get realistic. If we're talking sort of £35 per head. No?
Not in the least.
No? Not even close. Right. So if we went down to something like £17.50 a head, and looking at that sort of figures, I think it's incredibly realistic.
I'm still unimpressed.
I think we're going to find it very difficult to stack up at anything lower than around £15 a head.
That sounds feasible, I think. We can justify that.
Yeah.
So we've got a deal at £15 per head?
Yes, we'll be happy to go with that.
Well, that was absolutely hideous.
Yeah, I did not go.
The consensus of opinion now is that £60 was a ridiculous price. Is that right?
Exactly right, Sean. Exactly right.
Well, the point is that, you know, Philip went in and opened the batting at £60 a head, and the poor client nearly fell off his chair.
Sorry, I was highly embarrassed, to say the least.
But what I thought was extraordinary was that it went from 60 to 50 to 35 down to 25, and it eventually ends up at 15. And when the client said, what are you offering for that? You said what we were offering at the beginning of the negotiation.
That's right.
You look like a spiv, to be honest. Not the image we want to portray out of this boardroom.
So I'm sure many of you can relate to that, yeah? But you can see it from both sides. I mean, the poor guy from The Apprentice, totally on his own. In negotiation, you should always go in a pair. You should always prepare what the team roles are. He was completely left out to hang out to dry by his two counterparts. So when they walked to the lift, we're like, yeah, it was really bad, wasn't it? But like they didn't say a single word in the negotiation. You know, and he hadn't worked out his positioning at all. And exactly my point is, it got de-scoped in the price. But yeah, we're still giving the same level of service. And I know that's how a lot of you feel, is that, okay, fine, they're pushing us again from procurement, we'll reduce our margin, we'll do this. People need to feel the pain, clients need to feel the pain. And I think often or not, it's very easy for clients to hide behind procurement. But I'm sorry, if you're getting that from, you should never see procurement on their own. You should always have procurement and the client in the room. And they do play each other, but who's got the budget? It's marketing. It's your clients that have got the budget. I've knew one case with telecoms company where procurement didn't work. Your clients have the budget and you need to make sure you engage with them, because that scope is so important. That is the first, you know, line in any sort of negotiation in terms of process, getting that scope, getting the fee and then working. And I'm sorry, if you want to cut the fee by half, what comes out? So you don't end up being a spiv. I'm coming from Lord Sugar, who's like Lord Trump in terms of being a spiv. I've added this slide in from training I did actually for a big agency network in Europe, because I was saying about, oh yeah, it's all good procurement. They wouldn't do this, they wouldn't ask for the hourly rates. And basically the guys in Europe said, actually they do. You know, these procurement people we do within our market are liars and cheats. And I was like, oh well. So the point of this slide is just to say, you're always going to get different types of people. You know, that's life, isn't it? We get different levels of service on trains and planes and, you know, in shops. I think it's knowing the sort of person you're dealing with. And you're always going to get the Mr. Wolf, the people that want the cheapest cost, don't care about their client, don't really care about you, unfortunately. You're always going to get that. There's no point in moaning about them. You just have to understand that's where they're coming from. But then on the other hand, you get the enlightened ones. And I think you're getting better and better in terms of marketing procurement. Education. There's nowhere for marketing procurement to learn the trade. Get them in. Get them into your agency 5 o'clock on a Friday when that client bloody rings you up for something. I never worked so hard. I spent 3 years agency side. I've never worked so hard in my life when I worked agency side. Educate them. Understand your processes, because often that's what's driving their behaviour. So I've got a few little things here, things to remember. 3 aspects of negotiation: PET, process, elements, and tactics. This is the process that we get taught from a procurement point of view, usually by a big firm of consultancy firms like A.T. Kearney. They've either got a 6 or 8-step negotiation process. I'm not going to go through the detail, but the main point is to show you that out of the 6 steps for prep, how many of you prep your negotiation? I haven't worked agency side. We're going to get the cab in a minute. 1, why are you getting a cab? You should be getting the tube. Just saying. But if I'm paying. But 4 steps of prep and 2 are on the bit we love, which is execution. So please do your prep. Elements, there's all various elements. Who's got the power? Using what if, the relationship which Gary mentioned, that is so key. If you've got strong relationships with the internal clients, you should be using that. But for me, this is the key slide, my negotiation domain. The key thing is your MDO, your most desired outcome. So really doing your prep and knowing the position you're going to, that you'll be laughing. You have the annual agency ski trip. Oops, they don't exist anymore, do they? Some agencies even tweet about it, but no, it's having that, you'll be really happy if you have your MDO, and then you want your LAR, so that's your walk away position. And I know there might be some questions about e-auctions and the role of them and the point of e-auctions. I hate them, I don't think they're applicable to marketing, but the point of having e-auctions is to get to your LAR as quickly as possible. So for every negotiation you do, you batten as you want in the middle, the one that you're happy with. So you need to have your MDO and your LAR, so for every negotiation. In terms of that, tactics employees, if someone is using tricky tactics, know about it. And I had someone, I was agency side, and we called it, and we actually complained about the procurement guy. And it was hard. It was a hard call to do, but it worked. So don't be afraid. You're not going to do it all the time, and all your clients walk out, thanks to Tina. But I think just, occasionally, if you think you're getting bad practice, and don't be a victim. If you really feel it's just getting too much, then you really need to have that conversation about it from that side. I hate using my name, but I've just thought, why not really? So what I want from an agency negotiation, transparency. I mean, that is the biggest thing. And I do think some procurement people do go too far, because things like salary is really out of order. But have that, how have you calculated it? Let's work it out together. Information's power. Negotiation, hopefully you walk out of our 2 presentations all genned up on negotiation, and obviously having a contract in place, and especially those that are involved in media following last week, and I'm sure Tom Denver from ID Comms would have covered it this morning, is so key to have those contracts. And also I think you're going to find more and more clients looking at audit rights as well. So remember Tina and PEN. I tried to make a word out of it, Tina, PEN, PET, but I'm not sure if it all goes together. So you've got PEN, which is, at the end of the day, I could have just done one slide saying prepare. It's all about the preparation, having your MDO, knowing the roles and responsibilities. Exactly like Gary said, it's manage your emotion. I've known an agency get really, really red in negotiation. The client walked out and the agency looked at the client's notes, and the client walked back in and saw them reading their notes. So really manage how you feel. Time out, there's no problem in saying, I need time out. Just take your notes with you, obviously. And there's nothing wrong. We do read upside down, by the way. It's not a skill we get trained in. But you've got your notebook. But we were looking at your notebook, so put down, €1 million, great. So use it. So, and have your negotiation domain. And finally, the final cartoon. I'm sure some of you feel like this. Greg from Procurement, God of Hellfire, has got some questions. You'll succumb to my rate-crushing powers. So as you add it up to 120%, and then Procurement, you're not worthy of profit. He can't hear you. They seem to presets transmit, and I'm the God of Hellfire. And I've got information deaf if anyone wants that of all events and things to look at from a procurement point of view. So did my 20 minutes and 25 seconds.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So we've got about 10 minutes for questions. So I'm sure you have loads of questions for Tina and Gary. Who would like to kick off and grab hold of a orange ball?
Hi, I'm Dan Nelson again from Nelson Schmidt. I'm going to ask the same question I asked the clients this morning. From a procurement perspective, what are the obstacles of negotiating performance-based compensation agreements with agencies?
So again, so from a client point of, from a procurement point of view, what are the obstacles?
What are the institutional obstacles for even, they talk about partnership, shared risk reward, all of which would indicate a most desired outcome would be a performance-based compensation agreement.
So what's stopping them?
What are the obstacles preventing that from being accepted by the marketplace?
Procurement like performance-related fees. What's stopping them actually often is marketing, not putting the measures in place. So I did a performance-related fee for a client in Scotland, launched a music event, 3 agencies, brand, media, events. Great. Put a performance-related fee in place, 20%, and it's all shared. I like shared. All of you in it together, you either win or lose. Went back 6 months later, still win, it was great, you know, the launch venue. Right, so where are the metrics? Oh, we didn't agree on any. So it's metrics. That's the biggest letdown from marketing clients, I think. And also marketing have pressure to use their budget up in that year. So you need an understanding FD who would say, okay, you know, if you put, you know, 100,000 euros aside for that performance-related fee, obviously we're going to pay for it, you know, 12 months plus 3 months afterwards, but financially you need to spend that money. So it's metrics is the biggest failure of them, to be honest. But from procurement, we love it. And I think from procurement point of view, we're a bit cynical about the risk and reward, which is naughty, because actually there should be an upside. So sometimes it's more risk than reward, and that's a procurement thing, to be honest. But yeah, we like it.
I agree with everything she said. I like The Matrix too. It's a good movie.
Okay, thank you.
No, I have nothing to add to that.
Anybody else for any questions? Yes, wonderful. Down the front, if you could just pass the ball over, that'd be great.
Hello, Michael Troutman from Think in Hamburg. Who's the better negotiator, men or women?
Depends if you ask me or my wife, but I didn't mean to jump in and take that question.
No, after you, yeah.
We can pretend like we're married here for a minute. Actually, I think women tend to be better listeners than men. I know that's a huge shock for the audience to hear that. But it doesn't mean men can't be just as effective. It's, you know, a good negotiator is a good negotiator. But what we would do many times in a tense situation, we'd put a guy on first because the perpetrator in a law enforcement context would typically be more agitated and angry at first. And then when they were ready to talk, you know, in more detail about their problems and issues, then we put a female on, and they were quite effective.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I don't differentiate. For me, in an agency, it's more the FD versus the agency CEO. And I prefer to deal with the agency CEO than an agency FD. And people could say, is that because they're a good match? No, I don't find agencies, FDs, apologies, anyone in the room, as effective as dealing with the decision maker. So for me, it's more about the job role in an agency than the sex or the person negotiating.
Okay, Tina, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody have any?
Brian McGurk, Brand Create from Dublin in Ireland. Gary, can I put a question to you about the awful experience we've all just had with the Orlando shooting? Is that a case of really bad negotiation skills, or is that the inevitable, which is non-negotiable?
I don't think it's reflective of the skill in negotiations at all. I mean, there are about 8 elements necessary to be successful in negotiations, but far and away, the most important is a desire to live, to want to live. So if we're dealing in the law enforcement negotiations, and the person, even if they have ambivalence, part of them wants to live, part of them wants to die, we can put the proverbial foot in the door and try to work them towards the outcome that we want and have them survive. But if they go into a situation, as I suggest Orlando was, where the end was already written in his mind, I don't care, the best negotiator in the world probably would have not have been able to be effective with him. Doesn't mean you don't try, but I don't blame law enforcement at all on that.
May I just ask, is that not always the start situation in terms of going into a negotiation like that, that the end is written in the mind of the offender and your job is to negotiate that end?
No, I would disagree with you in that many times I've been at the scene of a situation and decision makers, the police chief or whatever will say, that person in there is manipulating us. They know exactly what they're doing. And in my experience, that's rarely the case. What you see is a lot of ambivalence. People get into a situation that they have no idea how to get out of. They didn't think it that far along. And part of them wants to live and part of them wants to die. But their decision becomes no decision. So yes, it's part of the negotiator's job then to help them steer towards the kind of outcome and decision we want. But to say that every situation's preordained with a specific ending, I wouldn't agree with that at all. Not my experience.
Yes, gentleman there.
Thanks for not throwing it. Brian Garvey from the Big Partnership. You talked about Mr. Wolf there, and I think probably most of us have got someone in mind for that specific persona. What's the best way, do you think, to deal with someone whose only real intention is to nail you to the wall and get the cost down, regardless of value? You can show them all the metrics and results and so on that you want, but they just want a lower invoice at the end of each month.
And are you saying that you've engaged with the client as well? Because obviously that's always a good thing to do, to say, this is what your procurement person's saying. Well, are you aware of that? Because they might deliberately be keeping them out of the loop.
Well, a friend of mine has a client who is also the wolf. A friend of mine.
Friendly wolf. Yeah. So they're both siding up together, both the client and the procurement person.
Sorry, I'm being too opaque here. We have a client whose marketing director is the wolf, the client.
Okay.
So there's one channel to go through,
okay.
And it's a tough one. So on the wolf persona, if that's all you've got to deal with, and you have very few other levers that you can actually pull, what would be your advice on that one?
I mean, the most drastic one obviously is to walk away, isn't it? But it's really easy to say that and really hard to do. So that's the most drastic one, is to say, right, that's it, because they know you pushed you then. Yeah. And they've just pushed you too far. And that's a really hard call. But if at the end of the day you're losing money, you know, that's the ultimate, is to walk away.
Do you think that's quite a
it's powerful
tactic? But when you walk away, what are the chances that they're going to turn around and say?
They do, but you know, if you play that card, you only play that card once, and you have to be prepared to walk away. So it is the most powerful thing. So that's why I'd say that's tough. It's really, if you've given them all the facts and the figures and they just won't listen, and ROI and we can do this, etc. And you know, if you give us a 3-year deal, we can look at this. If you've gone through all of that, the option is to walk away.
Yeah. I think there are tough characters that go into a situation with a specific set of demands. This is what I demand, you're going to comply. And I think you need to think about their needs versus their demands. And you have to educate them about, you know, I know this is what you're asking for, but there's some other aspects of this in terms of the quality of the service and the relationship that I think will show you the value of what we're trying to do for you. And you know, and you have to think about, what is this person trying to achieve? Is he trying to have a successful outcome that he can show off to his boss and so forth? There are certain characters that, you know, you're just not going to be able to work with them very easily. But in most cases, if you don't get defensive right away and get into an argument, you can kind of steer them to think a little bit more broadly than they are initially.
I'm Mark Bumblus from Braden Hart in Zurich. Gary, I have a question. It's a personal question. Did you never, ever grow tired of listening?
Good question.
As a parent, yes. Sometimes, you know, Bill Cosby, he's not so popular these days, but he had a great saying. He said, when parents are dealing with their children, he said, parents are not interested in justice. They want quiet. And so there comes a time where you say, because I said so, or I'm the parent. But in a business context or a law enforcement context, when I'm talking to a desperate person that I'm trying to keep from harming himself or someone else, I know that that investment of time and energy that may not seem to be making discernible progress is nonetheless buying me time, giving me an opportunity to change the course of what he has planned. And that's what's important. You know, the most common thing that police negotiators deal with is suicide. And it's also the thing that has the biggest impact on the negotiator. But you have to understand, as long as that person's talking, you have a chance. So that's your lifeline. You keep them occupied, you keep them talking, and eventually you may get the outcome you want. One other thing I'll add to that, there's situations I've been involved in that have gone many, many days, and someone will say, well, you know, we tried your advice yesterday and it didn't work. I said, well, that was yesterday. You know, what about today? You know, if at first you don't succeed, try again, be persistent. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. I can make something else up, but that's it.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. We could carry on, couldn't we, for a good half an hour or so, but for now,
I couldn't, I'm exhausted.
Thank you very much indeed, Tina and Gary.